I know. Cause I'm like, the amount of people who come up to me and I'm like, what do you do? And they're like, well, and I'm like, you should have an answer to that. Don't be asking for money on the internet if you can't answer that question. Welcome to Lessons from the Ashes, the space where rising from the ashes is more than just a story, it's a movement. I'm your host, Stephanie Rose, and each week I sit down with unstoppable entrepreneurs who face life's toughest challenges and turn them into powerful comebacks. Together, we dive into the raw, unfiltered stories of resilience, business triumphs, and the personal journeys that shaped it all. If you're ready to be inspired by real-life phoenixes rising from the flames, you've come to the right place. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome back to Lessons from the Ashes, a Westeros Media podcast. I am very, very excited to have a guest here who I have met on the interwebs before, and I'm really excited that we get to actually chat face to face now. So everybody say a warm welcome to Amy. And Amy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for having me. I'm very excited to be here. And I actually met you in person at the conference in Montreal, which was super amazing and exciting. So yes, I am, I like to call myself right now a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I have a wellness business that I've had for 6 years where I help people with Indian head massage, like holistic wellness, just being more mindful in their day-to-day. And then I actually started a operations manager business over the past year, just from things that I've noticed being in some containers with some coaches that I worked with. And just even within my own business, I noticed some things that I was more gravitating to. I was liking behind the scene things as opposed to always working with clients hands-on. So I'm in a bit of a transition year, but I'm very excited to grow and evolve. And I feel that's what we do as entrepreneurs, right? It's like you're constantly shifting, evolving, doing all the things. So yes.
Oh, I love that. And I'm really glad that we got to meet in real life after we had seen each other on the
interweb. Yes.
On the interweb so much. I really love doing that and being like, hey, I feel like I know you, but I don't. Is it awkward? No, usually it feels really good. Okay, so the whole platform of this podcast is giving people hope who are going through it. And what I like to ask every single guest to start with is a little story time of some time in your life where you went through something and came out the other side like a phoenix rising from the ashes, even if it was a very small phoenix and you felt like it was a really hard time. What I love to hear is what's the story? Let's hear the dirty details.
Absolutely. So my story started, I guess, as a child in a way, and it's just kind of I won't go back that long, but it's evolved from then. So I was the type of kid, I never knew what I wanted to do with my life. I was like, what do I want to do with my career? I feel like I'm supposed to just do all the things everyone's telling me I'm supposed to do. And my parents actually owned a business. And so I did a lot of customer service side of things for my parents' business. And then, as a good girl in quotation marks here, I got the corporate job. I did the thing. I got the job that everyone says you're supposed to get, with the pension, the benefits, all the things. And 9 months into working that job, I knew that job wasn't for me, but I was like, you don't leave that type of job because, this is the golden ticket that everyone wants to work for this company or this organization. So it's you don't leave. So I stayed like the good girl I thought I was supposed to do. And over time, I knew it wasn't meant for me, but I just kept pushing through going, it'll get better. I'll find something else. Maybe I'll move to a different department. I'm just going to keep plugging along. Also still trying to figure out who am I, what I want to do, because I feel like I can't spend the next 30 years doing this for the rest of my life. And so I eventually became a supervisor there, and things just kind of started to get worse, where one day I was sitting at my desk and a staff member had came over and talked to me. And then as soon as they left, I started getting this shooting pain down my arm. I was feeling like my face was going to fall off. And I was like, oh my God, I'm having a stroke or I'm having a heart attack right now. I don't know what's happening to me, but I'm something just isn't right. And one of my colleagues came over and I said, I think I'm dying. I don't know what's happening to me right now. Long story short, I went over to my doctors and I said, I think that I'm something seriously wrong. I'm having these issues. And they said that you're actually having generalized anxiety. You're having panic attacks. And so I had this whole oh my God, not me. How is this happening to me? I don't like, this shouldn't be happening. I have a great job, a great life. I shouldn't be having this anxiety and panic attacks. Like, no, 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 no. The doctor's got this all wrong. And so I went on medication for anxiety, which then started to make me depressed. And so then it just kind of started to spiral into, like, I remember one day laying on the couch in February going, this can't be how I'm living my life. Like, really, like, I had no motivation. And I would be driving to work and I'd have like shooting anxiety because I didn't want to go. I didn't like what I was doing. I didn't like the conversations I was having. I didn't like the support that I was offering staff. And we were sitting in a board meeting one day, and I was with the directors and a bunch of other managers, kind of all from around the region. And I remember, how it's one of those like out of body experiences. I could hear them kind of like talking in my ear faintly, but I remember looking out the window and I remember the conversation we were having, thinking, we had the same conversation 3 years ago, and we've done absolutely nothing about this. And then I had this huge epiphany of like, oh my God, who am I? How did I get here? What do I want to do with my life? Like, I just had this whole like spiritual awakening, I like to call it, because I'm like, I don't even, and now that I have this new information, I don't know what to do with this information. But all I know is my body's been telling me for a while, this isn't right. I've known this isn't right. I've pushed past this not being right because I thought I was doing everything I was supposed to do. And so I ended up looking into like network marketing, and I used essential oils at the time to kind of help with like my emotional well-being. And then I went off on mat leave with my first child. And during that time, I was like, okay, I got to figure something out because I know I don't want to go back to that. And I'm fortunate to have a maternity leave right now. So I'm like, let's figure some things out. So I started taking certifications in aromatherapy. I did reflexology. I did Reiki. I did like a whole bunch of different and at the end of the day, I was actually doing it for me, but I was doing it in the sense of like, maybe I can start a business doing this, but really it was also for me to help support me. So I went off the medication, all the things that way. And then I ended up starting my business at the end of my maternity leave. So I went back to my corporate job and I said, I just want you to know I'm here for a good time, not a long time. You know, things are shifting in my life, and the fact that I have a child, and I appreciate the support you guys have given me, but I know I'm meant for more. Mm-hmm. And so in September of 2019, I quit my corporate job, and I had family members sit me down going, you're crazy. Like, you don't walk away from a pension. You don't walk away from benefits. Like, what are you doing? They had my husband talk to me being like, she's doing her thing. I don't get it, but like, she's doing her thing right now. So yeah, so that happened. And then COVID happened. And so because my business was a personal service business, I kept getting open, shut, open, shut, open, shut. And I just kept knowing, though, I was meant for more. And so I feel like through all of this, I've discovered more of myself. I have the life that I want now. I'm able to drop my kids off. I have another child now. I'm able to drop both my girls off at school. I'm able to pick them up. If they're sick, I can spend that time with them. I don't have to ask somebody, if I can take the time off or find coverage for my team. And I also get to have conversations now with people that I feel like are making a difference. I didn't want to have to like, oh, you didn't do this work item today, and I have to write you up because you're not doing your job properly. Like, I want to be able to like help people in a way that feels good to me and remains within integrity. So yeah, it's all kind of started with not knowing what I wanted to do. But then it's funny how you kind of go full circle. Cause I'm like, I never, like, my parents owned a business. I never ever thought of being an entrepreneur, but then now here I am.
Here we are back at the beginning.
Back in full circle swing. So yeah, it's crazy how that can happen. But I don't know about you, but I look at them like I don't picture my life or doing anything different. Like, I love that flexibility and the freedom and helping people in a way that like you're being of service and it feels authentic in the way that you're supporting people. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I love that story. Thank you for sharing, first of all. And one of the things that like stands out to me in so many people's story is like, and then I had this moment where I couldn't do it anymore. And I'm like, There are so many people who are like wanting to start a business and they're like, I don't know when the time is right. And like, I'm going to plan this for when the time is right. And what I every single time say, I'm like, oh, you don't get to pick the time because your body's going to say, oh, hell no, fuck this. I'm out. We're done. And you do not get to pick. So saying like, oh, I'll give it my all in 5 years when this map things and this turns out and that. And I'm like, cute. That's adorable. No, your body's going to say, I had such a similar experience when I tried to like quit my business for a little bit and work at an agency. And I was like, I'll have stability. It'll be great. And then my body was like, oh, no.
No. We're not meant for this. No.
Hell no. We're not working 9 to 5 for somebody who is absolutely soulless when you have bigger things to do.
Absolutely. And that doesn't get your vision and your mission and like what you're meant for more. And I also think too, like you said, there's never a right time. So when I started my business, my husband actually started traveling for work. So we live in London, Ontario. He started working in Toronto. So I now have a 3-month-old on maternity leave by myself while he's traveling. So guess what I did? On naps, when she went to bed, like that's when I started to do all those things. So there's never a right time. You make it work. And I feel like you just figure it out as you go along too.
Yeah. I always feel like people are waiting for, in movies, like before it gets bad, like at the beginning, when the band is just starting out and there's like this montage, them doing like gritty things that people like love to like romanticize. They're like, running onto the tour bus and like handed out the things to a couple of things. I'm like, that's the montage. That's not what it feels like. It feels like when they're sleeping on the bus and they're uncomfortable and they wish they had the jet. Like it's all those other times. But then you look back and you're like, oh, wasn't that the time of our lives? And I think people they're all waiting for that thing. They're like, when's my montage? I want it to be cinematic right now.
Absolutely. And I also think that people don't realize there's signs that happening around you all the time. So whether you're choosing to pay attention to them or not, or whether you believe in God or the universe or whatever it is, eventually there's this analogy that Shana Recker told me. I know she didn't create it, but she heard it somewhere. And it's called like the feather, the wall, and the Mack truck. So you need to make a change. There's this little feather kind of like, brush around your face, like, got to make that change. And you're like, oh, go away, feather, go away. And then you're like, okay, I still know, like trucking along. And then you hit a wall. And then the wall's like, oh, okay, let me just like sidestep around that wall because I still am not ready to make that change. And then eventually the Mack truck comes over you because you're like, I'm forcing you to make that change. And I feel like that's what happened with having these anxiety and panic attacks. And I also think like what you're saying, how people think that they can it's just a big song and dance. And you're like, you're never going to have that moment. So stop waiting for it or if the universe is going to force you to like make that change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that like, once you've gone through one of those big, like you had to wait for the Mack truck, then you're like, okay, now I'm going to start listening to the feathers now because like, I'm going to not do the Mack truck again because that was way too brutal. I mean, I, on the other hand, prefer the Mack truck method and continue to do so. Unfortunately, yes. I am a fuck around and find out type person, and there's no other way for me to learn. I've so badly tried to learn from other people's mistakes, and I can't do it. I cannot do it. I have to go through it myself. And I think that's just,
I think that's just how it works for some people, though. And then I think because you're getting so much valuable and lessons from that you're able to implement, whether it's your own life or like supporting your clients with the branding and building their iconic brand and through photography, right? So I think a lot of times I can hear someone else's story, but until you go through it, you can't actually like help and support in that nature too, which it sucks going through and you're like, I don't want to have to, like, she told me this is what's going to happen. And then I did it anyways. And that's exactly what happened. So,
and here we are.
Yes. Totally.
I know. I think people think that I'm going to be like offended if I'm like, here's the advice I would give them. And they're like, okay, cool. And then they go and not do that. And then they come back and they're like, well, now I'm ready. And they're like thinking that I'm going to be like annoyed. I'm like, no, I knew you had to. I knew you had to go and struggle. And here we are. And let's just go now. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
You're like, it's good. And I think I just wanted to say too, when I heard you speak on the stage at the As She Rises conference, you like standing in your power, being like, if you don't want to build an iconic brand, I don't want to work with you. Like, I think so many people forget to use their voice and like stand in their power and say that as well too when they're building a business, that the clients they want to work with and the value that they bring when they support their clients too.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people like same story as you. They're like, I worked for corporate and I hate it. So I started my own thing. And now I work for any client who will give me money. I'm like, you're just going back to that same thing.
Absolutely.
Like, if you don't have like something you actually stand for and that your brand stands for and that you actually want to work towards, then like you'll just accept anything. And then you're right back to working more than 9 to 5 for somebody else.
Absolutely. And you still have that 9 to 5 mentality.
Yeah.
Because now you have other people that you're relying on, like, oh, I don't want to turn this client away, or I don't want to turn this down because, as you know, as an entrepreneur, your next paycheck isn't always guaranteed. So then you start going in that type of energy as well, too, sometimes.
Yeah, it can be really scary. And I think that's what gets a lot of people. And then they think, oh, well, I don't really have to map things out. I don't really have to plan things out. I'm like, all right, you do you, boo. But
yeah,
when you come back, I will be here. But my prices will have gone up. So just keep that in mind.
I'm growing and changing and evolving, and so are my prices with me. So absolutely.
We're all going up.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so what interested you? Like, I know you said you started with essential oils, but then you got like real deep into it. So like, what drew you to that in the first place?
I think what the essential oil piece was, I didn't want to be on medication for the rest of my life. And I was like, I feel like there's got to be like a different way. And I also think I'm not against network marketing. I did do it, but I think for me, what it was is the fact that like I was around an environment of people that thought differently and experienced life differently and dreamed bigger. Like I never dreamed as a kid. So like being in an environment where people are like, you can do and be and have everything. I'm like, what is this? What are you talking about? I can create my future. What does this mean? So I think that's kind of what started it, was using it for myself. And then because I was open with family and friends around me sharing, I'm using essential oils. I've gone off like my medication with like, doctor support in that as well too. So more people wanted to know like, how do you use them? And then the fact that I was pregnant, I was like, I actually want to like know my shit and know what I'm talking about. So that's why I became certified as an aromatherapist, not to just be like, oh, drink this in your water. It's like, no, please don't drink that in your water. Please don't do that. So I think it just kind of, and then it snowballed from there, because then it turned into, I was supporting people with products. And then it was like, I want to help people in other ways. So then I took like the massage course, and then I'd have clients say, oh, my head, it's really full of tension. I was like, how else can I help them? Oh, wait, there's an Indian head massage course. And then I'd have clients, like issues with their feet, and I wanted to do like a whole body approach. So then I became certified in like reflexology. So I think it was just one of those things that like, once you start, the box just keeps going. You're like, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. And it just kind of snowballed from there.
Oh, I love that. And I love that it started with like, you wanted something different, because I think it's scary when you feel like you don't have any options.
Yes.
Like for me too, like I was on a variety of medications throughout my life, and I always felt like so closed in, and the doctor's like, this is what will heal you. And then it didn't. And then I was like, well, do I trust you next time you say that? Like, what's next here?
Right.
And then nobody actually asks you, like, why are you depressed? Why are you anxious?
Yes.
Like I had multiple chronic illnesses, and then I got divorced and they all disappeared. And I was like,
What is common denominator happening here?
I'm sorry. How bizarre that happened. And the amount of people who told me the same thing, like I quit my job I hated and my anxiety went away, or I got divorced, or I moved countries, or I did whatever. And this thing that the doctor said, the only thing that would heal me is this medicine, it disappeared because I changed my life instead of just throwing something at it.
Absolutely. And I think that's so key too, again, is like changing your lifestyle and changing your environment and changing, what you listen to, who you share your dreams with, who you have those types of conversations with too. Right. And I think not everyone's meant to come with us on this journey, which can be challenging at times because, when you start out, you think you have this vision, and as you grow and evolve, not everyone's meant. I just look at it as like, they're just a chapter, or they're just part of the season kind of thing. Right. So.
Yeah, I think that's really hard, especially if you love them.
Absolutely.
There's like so many people that I had to lose. And now my circle is really small and tight. And I'm like, oh, like I see people with like huge friend groups they've had for like 25 years. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what is that like? But mine had to dissipate. And it can be really lonely, especially if you jump into the wrong circle. Like, I'm curious to know what it was like when you were jumping into like the network marketing, because I know that like right when I got divorced, I jumped in with a mentor who ended up being insanely toxic and like really shattered my worldview and not in a good way.
Yeah.
Because I was searching for somebody to like, I was searching and they were like the first person to be like, here's like a tidbit of love. And I was like, please love me.
Thank
and
you,
then,
thank you.
yeah. And then it was like, so the wrong thing. And then I was like, there's something wrong with me when this person showed their true colors. And I was like, there's something wrong with me. And like, I think a lot of people, when they're going through these huge things, like these Phoenix Rising stories that we're talking about, they're like, well, who do I trust at the end of this? Like when I'm the little Phoenix chicken bird frying, like what happens? Who do I reach out to? So I'm curious what it was like at the very beginning for you.
So at the very beginning, it was very challenging in like who I shared my vision with and my goals with. I didn't even really share it with my husband because he's very like skeptical on things. And I realized that not everyone's meant to know my dreams, my goals, my vision. And even though he's still like a part of it, I've got plans for us. He doesn't need to know all the plans that are happening right now.
You'll like it. Don't worry. Just trust me.
Just go with it, right? I haven't steered us wrong yet. So you're on this journey with me here, buddy. But what I did find is I had to kind of, I shifted some of my circles. And at first, like I kind of felt like an asshole because I would say no to things, but a lot of my friends were like going out to the bar still. And I was like, I don't really want to go out to the bar and get drunk. I wanted to have like deeper conversations, or like we would meet up with like friends and then they would be gossiping about other friends. And like, again, I feel like an asshole, but I'm like, I just, when you start to have that awareness, you're like, I didn't realize I was part of these circles. So I started listening to podcasts was a lot of what I was doing. Cause they always say, you're like the 5 people that you kind of hang around with. So I started listening to podcasts. I started looking for networking groups within my city of like other people that were starting businesses or growing businesses, and just started connecting more with like other entrepreneurs, because I knew my family and friends, they mean well, but it's hard to have a conversation with them because they don't get it. And they're not going through the highs and lows of entrepreneurship. They're complaining about their boss, or they're complaining about the next thing. And I'm like, how do I get my website to work so I can market this properly to people? Where like, they just don't get that or understand that. Right. So
yeah,
I just really felt like I had to set up boundaries, I guess, is what it comes down to, is setting up boundaries with my time, setting up boundaries with my energy, setting up boundaries with my conversations was really what it came down to. And then I think I also went on like a mentorship spree where I was like, I'm going to work with you. I'm going to work with you. I'm going to work with you. And I started working with like 1,000 coaches, I feel like, just because I was like, I need someone. I was lost and looking for guidance and direction in that as well too. And I know we both know Lou Clark and have her in common. And funny enough, she lives like literally around the corner from me. And I feel like she's always, for me, been one of those people that's like a straight shooter that will tell me how it is. So I feel like I started to build more like trust in that, because I didn't get the fluff. I got the like, that's cool that you like that. Here's why maybe you should consider doing something different, because this isn't working right now. So yeah.
Yeah, Lou is very, very much a straight shooter, and I appreciate that. And that's also like how I like to be. People always say like, oh, you're so blunt, you're so direct. I'm like, yeah, but I need to know. Like, I don't know if it's just, I'm like, I surround myself with neurospicy people, and I'm like, every one of them is so direct. So I'm just like, I got to lay it out like it is.
Yeah.
But I spent way too much of my life like pussyfooting around people's feelings and not being myself. And I'm like, I have zero patience for that now. I'm like, take me or leave me. This is what it is. I'm going to say it how I actually feel. And if you don't like it, then like, please, by all means, find the door, because life is too short for that. I can't be freaking bothered to be screwing around like that anymore.
Absolutely. And I think when you run a business and when you have a family and you have kids, I think your patience and your tolerance level also like plummets too. Cause you're like, I don't have time for that shit. And I think And I found for me, that was kind of what was happening. Like, even with like my corporate job, I started being more vocal and I was like, listen, I'm pregnant at the time. I have no filter. I'm just telling you how it is. And I've always been that type of person to tell people how it is. So I also feel like now being an entrepreneur, I don't like, yes, I want to be mindful of people's thoughts and feelings and emotions, but I also am like, I'm more directive, like, hey, you want this to work? Like, let's fix your systems in your back end and stop telling me you want to do it and let's actually fucking do it. So yeah.
Oh, me too.
Yes.
I used to like really do a lot of things to help like fluff people up. Because I was like, people need confidence. And I'm like, no, people need honesty.
They do need honesty.
They just do. Because you can blow smoke as much as you want, but like, honestly, like once you actually tell people, this is what you actually need, you don't have to do it. Like, it doesn't bother me one way or another, but if we're going to do this together, we got to do it right. And then the right people show up, I think.
And I think that's a very valid point too, because I think when you're first starting out as like an entrepreneur in your business, you're like, I just want clients, I just want customers. So you're attracting anybody until you start to get clear. And then, like you said, you're not fluffing them up. You're like being direct and like who I'm here, how I'm supporting you. And then the right ones you continue to attract. And it just blossoms from there.
Oh, absolutely. And then you get to do deeper work because you can't do anything more than surface level if you're not like being honest with people.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where a lot of people get like really stuck. They're like, well, I want to do more, but I'm like, okay, well then what is that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. And I'm like, all right, well, let's find out.
Yes. Let's explore that, what that more is for you.
Explore it together.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. So when you are helping people with your business, like tell me a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So I help people kind of behind the scenes with their business. I like to look at it as more like the client experience and the client journey. So I help set up like their onboarding process. I help with any like back end stuff, making sure like their email funnels are working or that they're like if they have a lead magnet. So I kind of do a little bit of everything. We do some brainstorming on like, okay, what are your offers? Let's plan out your offers for like the next year. And it's just been a really fun journey that way because I think it's really interesting. So many entrepreneurs are storing so many things in their head and don't have a lot of it like written down or mapped down, or they're looking to hire and scale, but all their processes again are in their head. So it's like, you can't just go and hire somebody because you need to now take the time of like, here's what you do for these steps so that your business is seamless and still operating and functioning as well too. And then I also tend to help with like team support. I think because I've always had some type of supervisor role, I help with like managing teams and leading teams as well too. So it's been a fun journey, like growing and evolving and kind of figuring things out as I go with this business as well too. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, they're like so excited to like have a team. And then they're like, I'm like, well, what are you going to tell them? And they're like, I don't know.
Like, okay. Absolutely. And I fell into that trap as well too, because with my wellness business, I didn't feel like I was legit business unless I had a team. So I was like, I need a VA, I need support because my business isn't legit if I don't have a team. So then I hired too quickly, too fast. And I didn't actually have work for them to do, but I was still paying them. So that I was basically like creating work for the sake of creating work to like keep them on my team. And I was like, damn it, how did I get into this cycle of like, so like, what are we doing this month? I was like, I'm going to do this offer and this offer and that offer. And then it just all fell apart because I'm like, none of this is making sense. And I should have hired them on like a project basis, as opposed to like hiring to have them like every month, all the time on retainer. So I think that's important for people to realize too, is if you're wanting support in your business, it doesn't have to be like, I'm hiring this person and now they're working with me for like the rest of their life. Like you can hire people in like project base as well too. And also knowing that like, even if you don't have support in your business and you are all the things in your business, you are a fucking legit business. Like you don't have to hire people for your business to be like real or legit. So,
yeah. I love that. I think that's really important because I also felt that pressure of like, I need this and I need that and I need this. And I'm like, well, what if like I had software that did that instead of a human person?
Totally.
And I got really into like making sure all of those things are streamlined and all of that. And I was like, okay, this can work. So if somebody's like, they're itching for hiring a team or like streamlining their back end, like what would you say should be their first step?
So I think their first step is to really go through and write out all the tasks that they're doing and all the tasks that they're not doing. And then from there, what are things that you like to do and what are things that you don't like to do and that you're willing to delegate and pay for someone else to do it. So for example, if it's creating social media posts and you don't want to do that or that's not in your wheelhouse of doing it, then okay, are you willing to like now hire that out for someone else to do that? So I think that that's really important to have that clear picture, and also looking at your budget I think is really important as well too, because again, you might look to hire somebody and you're like, oh my gosh, like they're the best person ever, but maybe it's not within your budget and that's okay. And knowing that like in interviewing, I feel like a couple of different people as well too, to make sure it's a good fit and not just hiring somebody like right off the hop as well too. So I think it's important just to find like the good zone that fits well with you too.
That's a good idea. I like that. And I think that so many people are like, they're just really itching to pass things off without being like, well, are we doing this the right way?
Totally.
Right? Like, is there, do I hate doing this because I'm doing it a really inefficient way that it could be better? Right. And then all of a sudden it's something you actually love doing.
Exactly. And you're like, now I've just handed that off. And it's like, actually, that was one of the things I got to do to like be creative and like have fun. And now I'm back doing the things that like I don't actually like to do. And so I think it's really interesting too, because I actually had somebody in my DMs the other day talking about, you know, they hired somebody for their business and they thought it was going to go one way and it's actually gone like a different way. So like, how do they manage that? I was like, very interesting that you're coming to me with this type of question right now too. So you know, I think it's again important to like, sometimes people are there to help you with your business, like setting up the back end. And this person was telling them to create an offer. Well, if you're creating an offer just for the sake of creating an offer, you're creating it not in necessarily the energy of wanting to serve. You're creating it because someone else told you to do it and you have no creativity or no flow around it. And you and I both know that people can tell when someone's creating something because they're passionate about it, or someone's creating something because they're like, someone told me to do it, or I need a quick cash injection right now.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really important too, is maybe to like interview and ask the questions of like, how are you going to support me in the things that I want and to meet my goals over the next 6 months too.
I think people get scared, like whether it's like hiring a team member or a mentor or something, it's like they get this like celebrity scared factor and they're like, oh, I just want to like be near them. And like, if I'm just near them, it'll be great. And they don't like ask questions like, what am I going to get for my money? Or like, you know, and then they're just like, I spent all this money and I didn't get what I thought. And I'm like, did you ask? You know, and like,
yep.
I had that too. Like, I thought because somebody was successful and they had a life that like on the internet looked like what I wanted. And I was like, as long as I'm with them and I'm paying them, then I can get that too. And that's simply absolutely untrue. It's so untrue. And you have to look at people's actual track record is the thing, you know, like if they just have fangirls and they don't have results, yikes.
Yes. And I think the other part that's interesting too is, to be honest, it's been challenging to see who's been like successful and not successful in their business, because on the internet, it's always been like a highlight reel and you think people are like killing it. And then behind the scenes, they're not, but like you as the person that's watching them, you don't necessarily know or understand that. Right. So maybe it's even looking at some of the testimonials, looking like asking if you could talk to like one of their current clients, or like testing out, you know, for example, like if someone is looking to have support with their business behind the scenes, let me do a business audit for you. Let me see like what's happening, what's not working, some things that I see. And if that resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. But I think it's again important just to kind of do a little bit more research before just thinking that being in the energy of somebody is actually going to like shift things too.
Yeah.
You want tangible,
real life things. Well, and I think also like just picking out the difference between people who are like shiny celebrities and people who are like existing businesses and brands. Like, I think there's a lot of confusion online between like an influencer and a business.
Yes.
And a lot of coaches, I think, unfortunately fit into the influencer category, because if all they can sell is how much money they made, like if that's their only selling point online, then to me, that's a huge red flag. Like, what else what else is going on here?
Absolutely. And I've really started to notice that too, and even being mindful of the type of like mentorship or support I even get within my own business, because that's great that maybe you just sold $100,000 worth of stuff. However, what was the client journey like? Mm-hmm. So when people signed up with you, did you ghost them? Did you send them an email? Did you actually provide on the trainings that you said you were going to provide them with? Like, what was that client experience like? So that's great that you can do sales, but then what is that experience like for the client working with you? And are you still getting those sales? Because people talk, and eventually people will not want to be in your world because they notice this pattern and this habit of like, you're saying one thing, but the other side of thing is saying something completely different too.
It does always come out. And that client journey thing is so important to me. I went like really, really crazy on this. Like last year, I was like, this needs to be fixed. And I have like whole email sequence and like there's videos and like explaining this and explaining that. Yep. And I'm like, at the time I was like, this is way too much. And the amount of people who are like, oh, I love it. Like I get 5-star reviews every time before I even send the pictures.
Yes.
Like, it was amazing. I'm like, you haven't even seen them yet. They're like, I know it is. And I'm like, all right. Because like, even just the experience of the day of the photo shoot, like how I've been sending them all this shit afterwards and before, and like sending them all of their packages and stuff. It's like, that part matters so much. And people think it doesn't. It does. I know that like the very most I ever paid a mentor, I was like freaking out. It was way too much money. I shouldn't have done it. I like pressed send and I was like, oh my God. 5 days later, I hadn't even received an email. And I was like, are you kidding me? And they're like, oh, well, we'll get to you when we get to you. Yeah. I was like, what the fuck?
They're like, I just made this scary investment. Like, exactly. Like, I just made this crazy ass investment in like myself and my business. And like, you just looked at me as like, oh, I'll eventually get to you. Like, again, I don't want to be treated that way. My clients don't want to be treated that way. Nobody wants to be treated that way. Right. And I feel like that's why you're seeing a lot of shift in the coaching industry because of that. Right. Because at the end of the day, people want tangible results and they want to have a good experience. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's truly amazing. I think because of all of the things that were promised online in 2020 and 2021, the world should look a lot different.
It really should look a lot different. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's how I know. I'm like, interesting that you don't have an army of people behind you with the same results of you now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think like so much has shifted too, because everyone was at home during that time period, right? So you're like, let me take this next course or let me take this next thing. And I think going back to, people forget the value of in person. So I think, as an entrepreneur, value of online still, but just as valuable to like go to events, go to conferences, go to networking, and like actually talk to people. That's where you get the clarity in your business. And I'm sure, as you know, like with your brand and stuff too, right? Is like, you actually have to tell people what you do and have a fucking conversation with somebody. Then they're like, oh my God. Okay. You're like, that came out of my mouth, but that didn't sound right. Okay. I'm going to change my pitch next time because this now feels better for me. Right. So
yeah, I think having to explain what you do to people is huge.
Yes.
Like that's actually a huge part of what I'm putting into my next program is you're going to have to explain and teach what you do to the other people in the group to practice that. Ooh. I know. Cause I'm like, the amount of people who come up to me and I'm like, what do you do? And they're like, well, and I'm like, you should have an answer to that. Don't be asking for money on the internet if you can't answer that question.
That's such a good point too. Because I think people freeze, or maybe going back to that like confidence piece again you were talking about too, is they think that I need to give like this epic answer or response of like what I do and how it's life-changing. Where again, if it's like just using your voice and saying what you do, like the fact that you're like, I help people be iconic. You don't want to be iconic? Go fucking work with me. Yeah. Like how simple is that? Like
so simple.
Use the words, right? Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for coming on. This was a very delightful conversation. So if people want to work with you and do the things that you are doing, how can they reach you? Tell me all the things.
Yes, absolutely. So they can reach out on Instagram. I'm amy.sussex. And then my business is the Business Management Co. So I have the website and they're more than welcome to DM me on Instagram. I'm happy to chat and do a business audit if they want on their systems and stuff as well too.
Oh, I love that. Okay. I'll
Thank
put all
you
that
so
in the
much
show
for
notes
having
as
me
well.
too. Sorry, I cut you off.
Of course.
Thank you so much for having me too.
I'm glad we got to actually chat and do this because feel like, we see each other not in the real life very often. And I'm like, it's good to be able to do face-to-face sometimes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for listening. As always, make sure you subscribe, make sure you share with a friend. And if you would like to share your story, slide into my DMs and let me know how cool you are and practice your little pitch, please. Okay. Thank you so much, Amy. This was great. And I will make sure that we chat again soon because I feel like we need to do a whole podcast on the customer experience. I think that would be great.
I'm in. I think that's awesome. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you everybody for listening and we will see you next time. That's a wrap, friends. If you're ready to finally embody the brand you've been dreaming of, it's time to make your move. And hey, don't keep this to yourself. Hit that subscribe button, share it with a friend who's ready to step it up and own their power too. Let's build these empires together.